So hi, we're Elisabeth and Cleber, and we're here to talk about Sabat, a trilogy of magazines exploring modern witchcraft. Stand here. It all started during my MA in fashion journalism at LCF. What if I make a magazine for and about teenage witches? I'm not sure how I knew that they existed. I had a hope, a feeling. I thought it would be really cool if they did. It felt like there had to be other 90s kids out there who wanted to harness the powers of the Halliwell sisters in Charmed or fashion themselves after the craft. It was not until I found the Witches of Instagram that I came to realize the full reach of this community. I felt that so much of the magazines and the witchy products out there didn't really reflect the minimalist, cool aesthetic that I found on social media. Celtic fonts, as we heard mentioned before, and drop shadows still ruled, and the imagery was far from the moody and monochrome work I consumed on Instagram. Maybe there was a real market for chic witch magazine. On Behance, I found Cleber, and he got the concept from my vague email, and it turned out he was really into witchcraft himself.
Elisabeth introduced Sabat as a witchcraft magazine you would not be ashamed to read on the tube. It would have interviews with real witches, it would have long essays, it would have shorter and lighter pieces. Visually, we aimed for a blend of crisp portrait photography and atmospheric fashion shoots and moody illustrations. It was a brief that led to a set of limitations that helped us create a minimal framework to portray the contemporary witch in a new kind of gothic aesthetics. We settled in keeping everything black and white, and for every shoe, a pastel tone as accent color. For the first one, you chose baby pink, of course. And this decision helped us in two ways, basically. Keeping everything black and white would make everything feel coherent between the many contributions that we had, and also save some money in print. And we all know, of course, that witches only wear black, right?
As an outsider making something for this community, it was really important that Sabat would feel authentic and representative, that it was made up of the voices of real witches. Most interviews were kept in a Q&A format, and I asked everyone the same question: what does the word witch mean to you? And no reply was the same. For Pam, the witch is a maker of magic, a mistress of mysteries, and a protector of holy truth. For filmmaker Camille Ducellier, she focuses on the political legacy of the witch. While herbalist April Graham sees the witch as a necessary outsider who challenges patriarchy. When your pitch is a fashion magazine for the modern witch, it requires a great deal of faking it till you make it. It was extremely difficult finding contributors to our first issue.
We did most of the shoots ourselves. Elisabeth worked as a stylist, prop producer, art director, and we're trying to find cheap and creative ways to generate cool visuals. For example, we gathered the internet for witch trial poster illustrations or books that represent the witch.
Wicked and playful, and sometimes quite unaware of the consequences, we wanted the maiden issue of Sabat to capture a young witch just coming into her powers. Sabat became a space that celebrated all aspects of womanhood, even the intuitive or irrational, a dark kind of femininity, a new brand of feminism where the witch was the central character.
We commissioned young and talented photographers. We also gained access to work from established creatives, and Elisabeth consulted with witch personalities and wrote most of the text herself. We also commissioned a group of core writers that would become the cornerstone of Sabat, like Pam, that was mentioned before, that she unveiled the trilogy that the magazine is based on. That's The Maid and the Crown, The Mother and the Crown. And for us, it was kind of important to have this authority in content, but we also got a lot of spontaneous contributions after releasing the first issue.
All of a sudden, witches from all over the world, particularly the US, got in touch and wanted to be part of our magazine. There was an abundance of content. We had to make use of randomly submitted work and recontextualize it into the narrative of the magazine. And this kind of community-sourced content came to be a cornerstone of Sabat. Showcasing it became a way to get around the challenges of our limited budget, but it also added a sense of authenticity or realness to the magazine. As we were making the Mother issue, witches and artists like Misha Goldberg shared her work and her march to save the beast and Mother Earth. Interviewing the Hood Witch, a great witch character of America, we understood that the witch took on different political cloaks for different groups as she heads the fight of witches against white supremacy. In her Instagram review of the Maiden issue, Morgan Suren said that she did not feel that her witchcraft was represented in Sabat. For the Mother issue, we invited her to write a piece on sex work and magic. For many witches, their identity is associated with overcoming trauma, with surviving no matter what. Their witchcraft is personal, and we wanted Sabat to echo that.
We wanted Sabat to feel as a magical object itself, a talisman that the reader would respond to that. Throughout the magazine, we hid symbols, a message, quick jokes, or heartfelt encouragement. Instead of having a masthead, for example, our logo is printed just with a subtle vanish. It's like an invitation for the reader to discover the magazine. If you also connect the letters between Sabat, you'll find a pentagram that's a hidden but cliche but core symbol of witchcraft. In our Mother issue, we use transparency to create layered and interactive spreads. And in the Krohn, we use cutouts to tell the story of an eclipse, a symbol of death and apocalypse. The commercial magazine's general format is a bit predictable, from the cover girl and the blurbs to the editorial structure and the themes explored, but we build on that since we think that's a bit interesting to create something subversive to the superficial, to the fashion magazine format.
Many issues of the fashion industry became issues for us as well. Thanks to our growing network, a very colorful community of witches, we managed to get around some of them. Sabat grew to be more diverse, representing witches of all genders, colors, and spiritual inclinations. But one problem remained, especially in creating the final Krohn issue, one that had to do with the generation gap and the history of persecution of pagans. The younger witches of the community in particular wanted to see older witches represented on our pages, yet finding older witches who wanted to be visible was near impossible. When we did find experienced Krohns, they would lend us their voice, but they would keep their anonymity.
Unlike the Instagram generation of witches, these women, they felt that exposing themselves would be putting themselves in danger. Persecution for their spirituality was a very recent experience, even here in the UK. If you don't understand something, people start to look in anger to that. So riding in this wave of visibility fueled by social media, we hope that Sabat also helped to contribute to challenge social stigma against witches.
It was clear almost from the start that Sabat would consist of 3 themed issues: the Maiden, the Mother, and the Krohn, echoing the neo-pagan deity, the triple goddess, and the phases of the moon. It was one way to approach the changing of perspectives and new challenges that face us at various stages of female existence. It would be an analogy for all the life, death, rebirth microcycles of our lives, like this Halloween, Death Day. But this structure also meant that Sabat had a clear, defined endpoint to it.
So for now, Sabat as a magazine is over, but we have other upcoming related projects. We just released Elements, that works as a dessert to the trilogy, and is a publication where all pages become posters, and where we have truisms for the modern witch.
I think a lot of young women growing up today are faced with similar questions, witches or not. We're vocal, visible, and inherently political. We appear to have an ocean of options, but at the same time, are we changing anything? Can we really be and do whatever we like? Do we have powers? The modern witch craves a less patriarchal and cynical world, and she uses new tools to hack the system. But she also offers us another left-hand path, one that is mystical and nature-orientated, where we come into our own feminine power as women and witches. A surprisingly progressive passageway to spiritual enlightenment. In her many incarnations, the witch retains a sense of potent femininity, individualism and independence, of being the necessary outsider or ambivalent archetype that challenges the status quo in her politics, practices, fashion, or simply in her way of life. this world can feel quite disenchanting, and I think that fashion and witchcraft, both together and separately, can give us a much-needed dose of magic. And then building on this community, our next project is Dreadful Press. Stay tuned, and thank you very much.
Thank you.